Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to another episode of In the Bag. I'm one of your hosts, Robbie C., and we have with us the wonderful bearded man, Mr. ABB. How you doing today, sir?
Hello. I'm good. Good back. I said it on the live that I did. I got to do the live today, the live field work. It's been a minute since I got to do that, so that was great. Thanks for everyone for chilling out there. Something cool that happened, side note, is gentleman, I believe his name's Ted, from Sweden was on, and we got talking about Castoplast, and he said he was going to send me a voice memo of him saying every single mold's name correctly with the Swedish tongue.
Oh,
so
like the latitude molds, like all of the House of Disc molds, or like just Casta?
Just Casta, because he was saying something about the iDog, the idog, the idug, whatever it's going to be. And I said, I'm sorry, I don't know how to say it. And he's like, I'll send you a voice message with literally me saying the entire Castoplast lineup so you know how it's said. I said, awesome. I will take the responsibility of being the resident Swedish pronunciation expert. So
I love it.
That'll be fun. But anyway, it felt good to get back to a normal week. We're doing a normal guest episode. Thank you all for hanging in with us on some of the theory/discussion episodes, which are also good and fun. I hope you all enjoyed it. But getting back to the roots always feels good.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And what else feels good is we have an amazing sponsor before we bring in our guest today. So a quick word from Aura.
All right. Have you guys ever gotten spam calls? If you're like me, you get them all the time, constantly, and they've gotten worse over the years. Not just the amount of spam calls I get, but they're getting more clever. They'll use area codes that look like they would be calls I would be getting from maybe my hometown or where I live. They've gotten smart at this thing, and they are super annoying. I mean, sometimes I'll literally leave the room, interrupt my life to try and answer one of these things just to realize it's a spam call. They are absolutely the worst. Now, I know one of the reasons I get so many spam calls is because big companies can't keep our data safe. Recently, AT&T revealed that nearly all their customers' call and text records have been exposed in a massive data breach. The stolen logs also contain a record of every number AT&T customers called or texted. So even if you don't use AT&T, if someone who texted you did, then your number has been exposed. So what can you do to protect yourself? That's where Aura, the sponsor of today's video, comes in. Aura will alert me if they find my phone number or any other sensitive information has been compromised, and they give me fast fraud alerts if anyone tries to use that data to access my credit card or bank accounts. Aura also does so much more to keep my family safe too. I get things like transaction monitoring, a VPN, antivirus, a password manager, parental controls, and identity theft insurance. You can get all this on one app at one affordable price. What I'm most excited about is their AI-powered call assistant that picks up unknown calls on my behalf to screen them for spam or scams. The AI forwards legitimate calls to me so I don't miss my appointments and emergencies, and it protects me from harmful text messages by filtering out known spam numbers and scanning links in the message for phishing threats. If you don't want to leave yourself or your family vulnerable to data breaches, you can go to aura.com/foundation and try out your first 2 weeks for free. It's also linked below in the description. That's aura.com/foundation. Thanks again to Aura for sponsoring this episode.
Welcome into the podcast. Noah, how you doing today, sir?
Doing great. It's a good day.
Hey, great day to be out here talking about some Frisbees. My wife was telling me this morning when she was getting the dogs outside, she was like, it's a pretty day. And I'm excited. I got lessons I'm doing today. Actually have someone who's doing a local lesson, Brad, because they're here. So wild times that we got going on. But Noah, our guests want to get to know you. They want to get to know you and your beautiful weather and your beautiful face. So we want to ask you a couple questions. First off, how long have you been playing disc golf?
I think it's almost 2 years now, like about a year and 9 months now, I think. So not too long, but it's been a little bit of time.
So would you describe yourself as a COVID golfer? This is a curious question I would have.
I guess that depends on when you say COVID ended or if it ended, really. But I would say no, because I started with some guys during like a Easter break, and it was just us. Oh, there's a disc golf course here. Let's go throw some Frisbees kind of thing. And then I've bought way too many discs since then. So that's about how it went.
Okay.
That's how it happens.
Yeah, y'all let us know in the comments. When would it's like the generational thing, like the baby boomers into the Gen X into the millennials and all that. When if you started playing from March of 2020 to blank, what's a COVID golfer? Let us know in the comments. Would love to know. And I bet there are people that consider themselves COVID golfers that are outside that, and I bet there are people that don't consider themselves COVID golfers that are inside of it. So, what part of the country are you currently playing in? I know you're in school, so if you want to give us like a both and.
Yeah, so I'm from southeastern Pennsylvania. So we have a really good mix of courses up there. I know one of the courses we have, I think, made the top 100 in the world this year. Muddy Run. I don't know if you guys have heard of it. But currently I'm in Pensacola, Florida, for college. So down here, there's like a good variety, but surprisingly, it's a lot of woods golf, which is crazy to think of in Florida, but that's how it is with all these pine trees and stuff. So yeah.
Dude, what a jump weather-wise. Do you prefer the warm weather, or do you prefer the like slightly cooler that you got in Pennsylvania?
Definitely Pennsylvania. Coming down here and playing disc golf in August is life-threatening, to say the least. So, yeah.
That's fair. You know what? People have some things to say about Sir Broderick Smith. But one thing that I really love about Brody is that he's like, when I try to say it's too cold, everybody jumps on me and they're like, "Arr." But when other people try to say it's too hot, he'll do exactly that. He'll throw his hands up and he'll just look around like, nope. So it is interesting how everyone finds those thresholds of what's your preferred environment for it all.
I think for me, it's funny because I feel like I do a lot of my disc golfing in the fall and in the winter. And everyone's like, "Oh, it's so cold. How are you playing?" And I'm like, "I'm from Ohio. Like, this is not even cold. Like, it doesn't get cold in Virginia. It's not like negative 10 degrees. It's fine. Yeah. It's actually very enjoyable. I have like joggers on and a t-shirt, and it's like 30. I'm like, well, this is nice. That's why I'm playing disc golf right now."
Yeah, I have to say it's hard to play winter golf in Pennsylvania. Yeah, because I mean, like, it's either you're walking out in the snow or you're walking out in like 6-degree weather, and I can't even feel what I'm throwing anymore. So yeah.
I feel that way as a Southern guy. I feel that way when it's like 30. I'm like, well, what am I supposed to do with this? So my hardest foundation trips are if my November trip gets pushed late or my February trip. This last year, my February trip was like first week of February. And I had the mittens and the hand warmers, all that jazz. So Noah, if people want to know your game specifically, let's say we put you in a field, wide open field, we're going to put a basket X amount of feet away from you. How far are you reaching consistently, forehand and backhand?
All right. So I would say backhand is probably going to be 375 to 400. And I would say forehand is probably around the same, maybe 350 consistently. I mean, obviously, like you say, comfortable, because like there's going to be times when I'm throwing a backhand that it'll go 420 or something, but that's a rarity. And it's the same thing with forehand. They can maybe go 430, 440 ish, but that's not consistent. So yeah, 375.
Okay. Very nice. Very nice. Some good distance. I know Brad, when he was doing the live, was like, I got one that I'm leaning towards, but we'll see based on, because Brad does not know your bag while he's testing it. He doesn't know who the guest is, things like that. There's only been a handful in the 117 episodes that I've ever like spoiled it early.
And it didn't affect the decision either. It was like actually kind of helping the decision.
Yeah. Yeah. So we put you on the putting green, Noah, and we said, all right, you got to make 10 putts from 15 feet, 10 putts from 25, and 10 putts from 40 feet. How many are you making at each station?
So when I was at home during the summer, I did this just because, I've been listening to the podcast for a while. And from 15, I think I made 8. And then it's 25, correct? 25. 25, I think I made 5. And then from 40, I made 2. So.
Okay. That's not bad. That is, I like that. And I like the honesty as well. Because I think a lot of people are like, 10 out of 10 from 15. I made 9, but I had to spit out on 25. And that, hey, you do your thing. it's your putting stats. So we'd love to hear it. Last question, Noah, would be, what is the greatest strength of your game?
It's definitely been different in the past year. I would say originally it would have been my approach game, but now I'm leaning toward, like, if I have to put a mid down a 15-foot gap for 200 feet, like that kind of game has been very strong for me recently. So that's definitely been a developing strength that I've been glad to have. So
control, probably.
Yeah,
you would
control.
say, is your,
Technical accuracy, that kind of jazz. Yeah, that's nice. I was actually so fun story for the listeners, for y'all. I haven't told Brad this story. I was talking with a friend who watched that How It's Made. Have y'all seen this Get Smarter
Yes.
Every Day MVP tour? So I was talking to a friend about that, and he was like, yeah, they said this whole section of the warehouse was basically paid for by the Holy Shot. And the friend has been playing for about as long as you have, Noah. And he goes, I had never heard of the Holy Shot. Like, just had no idea about it. And so he had to go back and watch the Holy Shot, watch that final Jomez round, like all of that experience. And I was like, the crazy part is that when we were watching live that day, we had already watched Paige mess up the most textbook approach she could come up with. She was 200 feet out, wide open, not a stitch of like obstacle in her way, and messed up the shot. And we were like, this is as crazy as it's going to get. Like, what a world, guys. And he was like, what, that happened? And so we went back and watched that together. So when I think 200-foot accurate shot, I'm just immediately running right back to, it helps to have that shot in your bag, whether you are Noah in Pensacola or whether you are the 5-time world champion who also is in Pensacola. Got to have that shot in your bag. So
yeah,
wild times, everybody. If you haven't seen that, go back and check it out. So you've got a really fun bag here, Noah. Really appreciate what you got going on. Very much, I can see a lot of mold minimalization occurring, which is super, super cool. Excited to kind of dive into that. So we'll start with Brad. You want to start distance drivers and just kind of hit drivers to get a feel of it, and then spend a little time on putters, or what's your? I'll let you drive.
All right. I would like to start from the bottom, I think.
Okay.
Because I just don't think there's a lot to discuss there. I think you're a guy that you're obviously favor discraft. It's pretty obvious. You have a few things you're sprinkling in here. Good for you. But I think your bottom of your bag is pretty self-explanatory. You're a challenger. You're putting with Challies, right? Your Chally OS, is that more of like I'm 50 feet out, I need to jump putt, or is that like I want to throw this disc?
Honestly, it's been more of a thrower recently, and it's been more of my straight throwing putter. I know the Luna would seem like a more straight throwing putter, but I've had it for almost a year now, and it's now like it'll flip up and just have a slight turn over for its entire flight. So the Chally OS is definitely more straight.
Yeah, before I discovered the Envy, that was my like throwing putter of choice, was the Chally OS. I had it in a Ledgestone. It was like a hard Jawbreaker or something like that. It was my favorite throwing putter. I actually recommended it to a lot of people at first. So yeah, I just wondered, when you have that, I know some people like a more like overstable disc if they're like jump putting, or they're like 100 feet out, they're trying to like do a weird jump putt or toss up. So I was just curious there. And it seems like you have a pretty standard zone setup as well. It looks like you're kind of embracing mold minimalization in certain areas, because it looks like you have a Jawbreaker flippy zone, and you have a Jawbreaker Z like straight zone, which is what I have a Z Flex Jawbreaker zone that's very similar. I'm reading your notes here. By the way, Disc RPM, shout out. I love that you have all your notes in, but I also love that your bags, you have everyday bag, bench warmers, traded away, gone forever, on the wall. I love all that, by the way. But yeah, so you have like a flippy zone, you have like a straight, both a reliable fade zone, and then you have, your note is does zone things with your, is that an ESP zone?
It's ESP. It's dyed, yeah.
Okay. That's interesting that it's like typically those are a little bit
It's
like straighter.
Yeah, it's almost brand new. That's why it does zone
Mm-hmm.
things still. I'm kind of beating it in, and I'll probably put it in like a Z zone afterward,
Mm-hmm.
just because I love the ESP feel, and I think if I could have that as like my straight zone, that would be fantastic. So
Right. And then it says you're going to cycle out that other one then,
right.
probably. Okay. That makes sense. And then you have a Zone OS, which is just that far end of the spectrum on the overstable side.
Right.
So tell me a little bit, like, what made you decide to mold minimalize here in this spot? Well, first question, do you forehand and backhand your zones?
Yes, definitely. So I was almost exclusively forehanding them for a while. But then I got more comfortable with throwing the putter type discs like Lunas and that kind of thing. And that made me more comfortable with backhanding zones. And so the reason for mold minimalizing there is because the first zone that I got was that jawbreaker zone, the one that's really beat in.
Yeah.
And so when I started gaining more power, more control, I realized that it wasn't really a zone. And so then I went and got that jawbreaker Z1, which was a zone. So then I realized, having that jawbreaker one to just, have that slight flip up and just pretty much ride straight. And then having the other one was just two different parts that I could use in two different parts of the game. So that's why I chose the zone to kind of get a few of them.
Yeah. And I'll say like my thought process on this area, and you just tell me if you agree or have any different thoughts, and Robbie too. Cause I mean, you kind of, Robbie, I think you like without like subconsciously made me kind of like take this theory over to my bag. I have zone NV combo for my entire bottom part of my bag. It's because I just like, for me, I'm like, okay, I want the confidence to know that any of those like approach short, like 250 under shots, I kind of have covered with discs I'm familiar with, and I don't have to think about it. I'm not like, oh, do I throw, this mold or this mold or this mold? I'm like, okay, this is obviously an NV shot. I need it to turn a little bit, so I'm using this NV. This is an NV shot. I need it to actually fade out. I'm using this NV. These are, and the zone is just my forehand version. I'm like, okay, well, I need it to flip up and then fade, or I need it to turn a little bit. You know what I mean? So I think I've mold minimalized in that part of my bag because like the accuracy and control needs to be there, and I don't want to like second guess myself on a different mold. Do you feel that way, Noah, or have you even thought of that way?
Yeah, I totally do feel that way. I have a lot of discs in my bag, as you guys can see. And so I think a big part of my game was realizing that I like letting the disc do the work instead of putting discs on certain angles. I mean, I can do that if it's necessary, but having all those different zones to do different angles just makes me more comfortable. And that way I can know, oh, this one does this, and I can just go directly to it.
So,
Robbie, what do you think about this?
What bag do you carry? Like what physical bag?
The new Discmania one, I forget what it's called, but it holds an incredible amount of discs. So
yeah, it's like paratrooper-esque. I feel like House of Disc was like, hey, let's take the paratrooper and modify it just a little bit, and we'll call it a different bag. So I definitely think that makes sense. So I'm with y'all on this entirely. It's funny with the shock and awe that I've texted Brad about, and I haven't fully teased, but we'll give it to in the bag first, is that my main overstable throwing putter right now is not a pig. It's a zone, which shocker to the world. It's a Zone GT to be specific, and even more specific, it's the Ringer GT top because I can't let myself love things that are available for some reason.
Right, of course.
That's my disc golf boon. But like same thing. Immediately when I grabbed it, I was like, this is great. I figured out why I was having issues with it, zones in the past. And so I got a jawbreaker one that literally is like concave, still flies pretty fantastic. So I love that mold minimalization to a degree. I would say in your Chally OS versus the Luna, if you get a chance to check out or find any of the new Big Z drop that they tried to replicate AB's and Paul's like original Lunas, those are actually pretty stable for a Luna. The only other Lunas that I've thrown that are similar to those are the 2020 Tour Series, which just says like Macbeth across the top of it, and they're like that swirly Big Z. But those are obviously so expensive to find. It's like $90 a pop for those. Not worth, because there are other discs that do the same thing. But I feel that on the Lunas. So yeah, the mold mineralization to a degree. I like that. Okay, this zone, like the Jawbreaker Z zone, you just have in the background. Like you can pull it out. And in case of emergency, to me, that's the best part about when you really fall in love with a mold like that. You start cycling it, is the Gone Forever or the bench warmers. Like that one can move into the bench warmers, and let's say new zone, like the cool fire zone, it gets lost or something terrible happens to it. You're immediately ready with a backup, which is sick.
Yeah, I just got this one too, which is like brand new. So like hopefully that one will get cycled in at some point too. So
yeah. So Zone OS does Zone OS things. When you need that massive flex, get it done. The person who uses Zone OS the most, that shocks me the most, is Trevor, who uses his Zone OS essentially just like a zone at short approaches. But props to him. Way to get it done. Let's talk mid ranges for a second. You've got Meteor on its own, Buzzes, and then the Bobcat. So kind of walk us through, when are those getting used?
Honestly, I think that Meteor needs to come out, and I'll say that right now.
Okay.
All right.
Because like I only say that because recently the white Buzz, the Ledgestone one, is now like not straight anymore. It's flippy. So, and I find myself leaving the Meteor in the car or leaving it in the bag. So I guess it's not good.
Yeah.
But the orange Buzz is definitely straight. I've had it for a long time and it has never beat up. I guess it's the Z plastic. So it's straight. It'll fade out if I put it on a little bit of Hyzer. And then the Bobcat's just money. I mean, I found that mold maybe 3 months ago, and like I use it probably every round. It's incredible. So
Okay.
Shout out Subbox. It's a birdie or die Subbox Bobcat.
Yeah. Should have been. I can't remember because I'm looking. I have a birdie or die. Like I have the zone that you were just holding, Noah.
Yeah.
Was also that same box. I'm pretty sure.
It was. Yeah. Yeah. Both of these. I just didn't die this one.
Yeah. No. If you do decide to dye it, leave the dye in longer. Leave the dye in much longer. The Dyers Guild saw my video about it and they were like, my guy. They shot me a message afterwards. They were like, you got to leave it in the plastic. Like it's premium, my man. My bad, guys. My bad. I'm not the dyer. That's not what I do anymore. So if you were to put, let's say the white Buzz shifts over, would you put another Z Glow Buzz in that slot, like just to fill the void, or is there a different plastic Buzz that you might look at?
I don't know, because I feel like I know I just said I like letting the disc do the work, but I also feel like I can manipulate that Buzz, the Z Glow one, to be pretty straight if I need it to be. I think there is a world someday when I would do that, but probably not anytime soon. Yeah.
Let me ask you this too. Obviously you went, you're going to have Buzz line up and then Bobcat. Have you tried a Buzz OS? And if you have, what made you pick like the Bobcat over like a Buzz OS?
I have not. Honestly, that overstable mid-range slot, I pretty much just discovered when I found the Bobcat. Like I'd heard of, the Swarm came out not too long ago, the Quake, like those type discs, but I'd never tried one. And until I actually got a hold of the Bobcat, did I realize that was like almost an essential part of my game. So Yeah, no, I haven't tried the Buzz OS. So
Yeah, and I think the Bobcat's great. So, if it's working for you, definitely keep it in there and you're confident with it. And I also think it's just good to branch out and have other brands in your bag. But yeah, I just was curious because, you're clearly a majority Discraft guy, and I just wondered if you tried a Buzz OS and if you didn't like it, why.
yeah.
So that was just interesting. And then I guess for that like step over from the Bobcat, like a very overstable mid range, are you just like, do you find yourself like going up in disc for that slot, or do you find yourself like, oh, I'll throw the Zone OS in that slot?
Usually I just kind of muscle Zone OS, or I just throw the Bobcat on a little bit of extra Hyzer, because it is still like incredibly overstable. I know there are some runs of Bobcat that are kind of like, oh, they're overstable, but they're, 0.2 or something.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think it's partially that glow. I think I forget what the plastic is called.
Nocturnal.
Yeah. And that just makes it that extra bit overstable. So
I think that makes a lot of sense. Robbie, if you don't have any questions, I'll let you maybe guide the driver conversation. We'll skip over the 7-speed area. I know there's some discussion we had there, but I think you and Robbie probably have a similar like distance and arm speed. So maybe you can lead that discussion a little bit more. I'm not throwing a nuke. Sorry, everybody. That's just not my game.
Wow, Brad. Wow. I'm honestly proud of you, sir, for not. So we got the Venom. The Venom, I think when the Venom was released, everyone thought it was going to be this like almost juggernaut from Innova type, like just very, very, very situationally usable. And I don't think the Venom has fallen into that slot for lots of people. What are you using it for as opposed to the other options?
So the Venom kind of recently found its way into the bag. And honestly, it's between the Force and the Venom right now. That's kind of like, it's not like I have both and I use both. It's more which one's going to come out. And so, the Venom having the numbers 12404, it seems like you said, it seems like it would be incredibly overstable, but I've definitely found myself using it as more of just like a pushing straight Hyzer out kind of driver. And so if I need like, I don't know, let's say we have like a 400-foot hole down a wooded fairway and it just needs to push left at the end, I'm throwing Venom. You know what I mean? So, or Force, I guess.
Yeah. Yeah. So the Z Flex Force, the note you've got on it, furthest flying disc on forehand, with it being like, do you primarily throw both of them on flex forehands? And if so, how does that Z Flex plastic feel on force over forehand flexes?
So that has been something that I've kind of disliked about the Force a little bit, and maybe I should get a different plastic, is that when I'm throwing it on forehand, it definitely feels a little, it's got a little wobble to it that makes it a little bit uncomfortable. So I would say the Venom definitely has the
like the
step on the Force at that point. But I usually only throw the Venom on forehand, but I'll throw the Force on backhand just because it's a little bit more comfortable and a little bit more forgiving. So yeah, it's kind of just a battle right now.
Okay. And so then you jump over to the nukes. The nukes are, I think people get intimidated by the massive rim of the nuke. But probably in terms of like overstable feeling drivers, one of the easiest to get massive distance out of if you can get that nose angle down on the big rim. So it's obviously worked for you. What do you love about the nuke?
So that blue nuke that like I have the numbers changed a little bit on, or I guess a lot on, it's just money. I've had it for so long. I've beat it into, what I would say is absolute perfection. It probably flies more like a crank now than a nuke, which is why I can get absolutely huge distance out of it for most of the time. And then the other one, the gray nuke,
is more just, it's pretty much the same thing, but it just has more fade. So it just, depending on what I need in a hole, I can get them both out past 350 pretty easily. And so it's a comfort thing for me at this point. I've had the nukes for so long and I can just rely on them for distance. So.
Okay. I love to hear it. And then the Thrasher kind of hanging on there. How often is the Thrasher getting used? If you play 5 rounds, we'll say you play 4 rounds. So that's what, 54 holes? Maybe more. It's more.
In 4 rounds,
72 holes. Final answer.
maybe 3 or 4 holes.
Okay.
And it's only when it's like a roller or like a super high turnover, something like that.
Okay.
So
yeah, I'm slotting more and more into, as I love mold mineralization to my core. I think that we can get trapped in the not wanting to put a Thrasher in the bag because you're like, well, eventually I'll just beat this blue nuke in and it'll fill that slot. And it's like the most beat in nuke, unless you run it over with your car multiple times and then have your dog chew on it, have like an X, burn it a little bit, like whatever you need to have happen to this disc. And even then, I think it will still never fly reliably like you could just put a Thrasher in. And I'm finding this in my lower parts of my bag currently, having switched to the Atlas Pro, like for the prototype. I'm having a little more room that I get to experiment. And that was one of the first things I did was put in a super flippy mid, because it was like, there's just times where I really like having that disc. So I really commend you for putting the Thrasher in there. Even though you don't use it that often, I think people look at the overstable side and they're like, well, it's okay that I have this Venom that I only use in super, super, super rare circumstances, but I can't have that for a flippy driver. Of course not.
Yeah, that makes sense. I think
Right.
that there's also like, sorry, I was just thinking also, I think there's a time investment too. Like it's a trade-off. Like you can try to beat in a disc, like, or like go to your local used bin and really hope that you find something. Like I'm guilty of this with envy. So like, I understand I'm like also contradicting myself a little bit, but it's just like you have to weigh like, okay, is it worth like, okay, I can just go grab any Thrasher and it's going to fill that slot that I need. Or I'm going to have this Griffin disc of a nuke that has this perfect scenario, perfect plastic, perfect amount of time, perfect amount of wear and tear to kind of do that thing. Like which one is more, which one's more fun or valuable, I guess, to you. And like, to me, I don't have the time. I don't play as much as I used to. A baby does that to you, I suppose. But, so I'm looking for people to beat in those envies. I'm looking for that perfectly seasoned one versus like, I probably could just throw a proxy or something and it does the same thing. So
yeah.
For what it's worth.
I have to say that blue nuke is probably already a Griffin disc. Like I don't think I could find a nuke. I mean, maybe if I looked in like a used bin for a while, but I don't think I could find one that flies like that with that much turn already. And it's nothing like the Thrasher. So
here's a take, not even a hot take, but I just don't. There are certain discs like once you like are around like a specific area and a specific use bin for a long time, I see a lot of trends. A lot of those high speed drivers from any manufacturer, you'll see a lot of those come in and they're barely used because people buy them and they're like, man, I can't throw this thing. And they put them back in. So it's really hard to find a really weathered nuke because people like you are like, I cannot let anything happen to this disc because I can actually throw it. I mean, Robbie, correct me if I'm wrong, but that you've seen your fair share of used disc as well.
Yeah. Oh, for sure. I have a beautifully seasoned, when I first fell in love with before I signed with Innova back in 2021, I was working on a trilogy only bag and I found a run of Raiders that I loved to the core. So fantastic. And while I was up there for Worlds and a joking Hyzer Club round was like, what if I threw a 4-hand Raider around this tree over the lake? That would be sick. And it just burned right over. And I played it off as like, oh, it's so funny. And then in my heart, I was like, what have you done, you fool? Like, that was such a good Raider. And you just yeeted it into the middle of that lake. You silly, silly man. So I'm with you. But I think you're on the right path with that, Noah, because while it is a Griffin disc already, you can see that its predecessor is working. Like it is, you have the path to it. And we've talked about Griffin discs on the podcast before, pros and cons. Should you have them? Should you not? To me, if you love a moles and you're working other discs towards the Griffin disc, I think it's even better to have Griffin discs there and available because eventually you'll season them in. Like the goal is, I mean, I have another disc now. I tested it the other day that flies just like Precious Child. So suddenly I am being way more aggressive with that pig because I'm now like, if I lose it, okay, that would hurt a lot.
Yeah.
But my game wouldn't be affected on the other side. And I think that's what you have the opportunity for with the nuke. But I want to open you guys up for, this will include the vultures because Brad, vulture lover, Brad struggled to find a overstable 7 or 8 speed, like straight to overstable. And that's kind of what we're focusing on today. So I want you guys to kind of talk vulture, undertaker, that whole world so that we can dive into I'm really going to take a back seat unless things like get derailed or, oh man, we should talk about that. So we'd love to hear you guys kind of walk through what's going on with vultures and why do y'all struggle to find shorter vultures?
Yeah. So here is what's interesting. I also do the Firebird vulture combo. So we're on the same page there. Let me ask you this question. Okay. I'm going to say something also. Number one, I think the Undertaker is supremely overrated. I think it's trash. That's what I think.
Wow.
I think it's.
I feel like I should leave right now.
Yeah. That's how I feel about the Undertaker.
That disc you have in your bag, trash.
Yeah. Anyway, we'll talk about that in a second. Vulture wise, what do you like about the Vulture? Someone who can clearly throw way farther than I can. What do you love about the Vulture?
I like how much I can control it.
Okay.
Like that's pretty much it. Like it's great distance, but I love the control factor of it.
Yeah, I kind of feel the same way, to be honest with you. I feel like it's a very, like, when people talk about control drivers, like the Vulture comes to mind for me, because even me, like I'll just, like, there's a lot of variety in like my distance these days because I do have moments where I'm like, wow, like everything's clicking, throw like farther than I normally do. But I mean, let's just say I'm in the 320 range, 325 comfortably with the Vulture every time. And I love it even like for a slower arm speed like mine. I feel the same way about the Vulture. I feel like it does a lot. Like that like 10 speed control driver, I don't have a lot there because I feel like I can do so many with two. I have 2 Vultures in my bag right now as well. And it's like one of mine's more like overstable. That's just going to be an stable Vulture. We played the Hyzer Club doubles round, hole 17, Robbie, at Timbrook. It's like most people throw a forehand or it's a straight shot. I love like the big Hyzer over the hill and let it scoot down the hill. Like that's a perfect Vulture shot because I feel like I don't give up distance for the overstability with a Vulture. Maybe that's the best way to put it. And that's what I really like about it. If I need to flex it, I can do that. But it's also pretty easy to find like a flippy Vulture or you can season one in pretty easily. So do you feel like that's accurate, Noah?
Yeah, totally. Yeah. So I think the Get Sneaky one that you guys see in there, I took out and I replaced it with this one. So it's just an ESP, but it's brand new. So it flies basically the same, but I like the feel better. Yeah. So, and then the blue one that's in there is like that one that you said, they're easy to season in. You can get them to go straight. That's what the blue one is.
Where do you, selfish side note, where did you find that Vulture with the octopus stamp on it? It is sick.
It was from a tournament I played. So they were giving them out. Yeah. So bottom stamp.
If you can help me locate one of those, there's a reward for that.
All right.
We're on a podcast. All right. So Vultures.
This man's shopping.
Yeah, I'm shopping right now. Sorry.
He said, by the way, that disc you have, I hate it. Trash. Also,
Can I have your other one?
Right. Yeah, no, that one's sick. I have a thing for like the octopus. Like it's been a dream of mine to have one in my saltwater tank. Anyway, Undertaker, why do you like that garbage disc?
Because it flies like a superiorly beat in vulture. So it's like my really flippy vulture because I don't have one. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So that's honestly the only reason that it's in there. It used to be like my vulture slot before I discovered the vulture, but now it's a beat in Undertaker, so it's just a flippy vulture, which I don't even really find myself using it that often anymore. So
right, I'm being like a little like I'll say
aggressive
toward the Undertaker, only in more of a play way, but for real, I think the Undertaker is a very confusing disc because I think it's recommended to a lot of like beginners that are trying to like get into like fairways and drivers, and I feel like off the shelf the flight numbers are not correct. Like I don't feel like it's just like flippy like 9 speed that'll give you like some nice flip up and carry straight off the shelf.
I totally agree.
I think that's just how it's been marketed. So it just always like, I feel like it's recommended a lot and then people are disappointed with it a lot. And I also say that for me personally, because I was like, man, this seems like a great disc for me. And then it was just like nothing. I tried a bunch of different plastics. It never was like what I wanted it to be. And again, you know, I don't throw 400 feet either. So I think for those type of players, it's probably like a little definitely flippier, definitely probably flies more as intended. But yeah, off the shelf, I don't love it. And that's really how I feel about it. I don't feel like it's garbage. I just don't feel like it's like the disc everyone thinks it is, personally.
There's disc I feel the same way. And honestly, the only reason that I like the Undertaker in my bag now, because it used to be, like you said, it wasn't what I wanted off the shelf. It sat in my car forever. And then one day, maybe 4 or 5 months ago, when I realized like I could actually get distance, I threw it again and it flew very different from when I was just starting out. So that's the only reason it's in there now.
And you like it because it's melted. That's why you like it. It just cooked in your car.
Yeah.
Now, on the other side of this, the heat, I love recommending the heat to newer players, like especially people that have been playing for a little bit. They're like, okay, I want to try to throw some drivers now. I love recommending the heat because I think the heat bombs for like slower arm speeds and really gives people that sense of like, wow, I can kind of throw a little, like I can throw kind of far. Like, I feel like it's really easy. I think the glide is like on point. Like it definitely has a lot of glide, especially if you can find the right one. For someone with like your arm speed, is it still like it says gradual turnover for you on backhand? So are you like putting on quite a bit of hyzer and letting it turn? Or are you just like this particular run is just like maybe a little more stable than a typical heat?
So usually what I do is I just take power off of it a little bit, or I'll throw it like a little bit nose up or something, because the heat is just very comfortable. Very like, if I want to be very accurate, it's perfect because I can just take some off of it and just let it flip up and turn. And that's perfect because, you know, I didn't want to have to, you know, throw like, I don't know, a buzz or something and just muscle it as hard as I can, you know, so a heat will just give me that turnover pretty easily.
That makes a lot of sense. All right. I think that gets us through the distance drivers. And I mean, now to our regularly scheduled portion of the episode, the recommendation. And, you know, for those of you looking at the graph here on Disc RPM, there's a giant gaping canyon around the 6, 7, 8 speed, like semi overstable slots. Right. And that's kind of what we're going to talk about today.
So which disc did you try, Brad?
I tried the Opto Ice Explorer Grand Slam Edition, and then I also tried the Glory from Latitude 64. So both really great discs. I will say I did bag the Glory for a minute, not for super long, but I did have it in my bag like the first run. And then the Explorer, every time I pick this disc up, I'm like, why do I not throw this disc? Because it feels great. And I think, you know, someone that both Robbie and I are good friends with, Jesse from Trash Panda, I know he bags Explorers as well and talks very highly of them, and he can bomb. So that makes me feel good about like, it's always kind of weird recommending a disc to someone that can throw like quite a distance further than you. But I think That's also good because I think I can kind of get in that headspace. Like, what if I could throw that far? That would be nice. But I think both of these are going to stand up for you. I think hand feel wise, we always talk about that. I said it on the live this morning. I guess like the Explorer feels really good. They both feel really good, but plastic, I mean, there's very few plastics feel better than the Royal line, this Royal Orbit or Royal Grand Orbit. It just feels so incredible. It's just a great feeling disc. But this Opto Ice feels really great too. It's like enough gumminess. It's like it would be between Z and Z Flex, like right in between for me. So it's like has some stiffness to it, but like it's still, you can get your thumb really into it, which I really like. So I mean, if I had to give a winner to hand feel, it's going to be the Glory, just because of the plastic, not necessarily like the feel in my hand. How they sit in my hand, they both feel good. There's really almost no difference how they feel in my hand. But plastic wise, Glory's going to win. So when I tested these out, I bagged the Evader kind of for this slot in my bag currently, which is probably a little closer to the Explorer, I would guess, Robbie, than the Glory.
Yeah, I'd say so.
Now the Glory was kind of in that spot for me initially when I was looking for an overstable fairway, because I do FDs. Let me take a step back. Before I go into the recommendation, I noticed on your bench warmers tab, you have the FD. Why is the FD not in your bag? And you can be honest, although it's maybe the best fairway of all time.
I think it's the same exact situation that like with you when you had the Undertaker at first. It was like it's the numbers. It was like 7601, and I was throwing the FD like really early when I first started disc golf, and it would always either be too overstable, or I would just put it on a bad line and I wouldn't throw it well. I wasn't liking the hand feel. I think it's more of just like I've had bad experiences and I've never gone back to it. And
Makes
since
sense.
then, I've actually given my brother that one that's in the bench warmer slot. So
Yeah, I think like a C-line FD, especially which plastic, like if you get a green or yellow one or even a red one, like they can be overstable. Like I have my lineup currently is I have a S line that's beat in a little bit. It's like kind of flippy. Now it does turn, but an S line FD off the shelf kind of, I think, throws exactly like the flight numbers indicate. Has a lot of glide, pretty straight, but has a little bit of fade to it. And then a C line, I would almost give it like a little bit more stability. Like it'll still have that flip up, but it does have a little more stability right off the shelf. So that's kind of where I'm at. So I was just curious what your thoughts were on that before I like went into the Explorer, because I will say I feel like the Explorer definitely is more overstable than a C-line FD, but it's not like super like it's not more like way more overstable. Like it's definitely a little more overstable. I will say like the fade out at the end is more aggressive than a FD is ever going to be. Even if the FD has more like that gentle like fade out,
right.
The Explorer is like, okay, I'm going to get overstable now. And then it kind of becomes overstable. Okay. Backhand flight wise, if I'm trying to keep as flat as I can, which is going to be a little bit of Hyzer, a little bit of Hyzer, because I'm not like super great with my angle control in that like small increment window. Both of them are going to go like the Explorer definitely would go straighter longer. The Glory like really wanted to hook up and be more overstable sooner. I was getting more distance with the Explorer on backhand, like pretty not effortlessly, but like I wasn't throwing super hard and I was getting like over 300, 325, like just consistently there, which I think is good. And I will say like it was harder for when I'm trying to, because if I'm thinking about this kind of disc, if I'm like, okay, I'm going to use it because there's a headwind or yada, yada. I need it like something to get left, but I'm also like starting to learn, like what I watch, like watching Trevor, he takes an overstable disc and he'll actually force it over a little bit to try to get some more distance. Right. I mean, it's pretty common practice. So I'm trying to work that in. So I was trying to like flex these a little bit, like force them to turn to like get some more distance out there. It was definitely easier to do that with the Explorer than it was the Glory. If I did with the Glory, it felt like it was too much or not enough. Right. And the Explorer was just kind of lived in that little window for me. That was a little bit better. On on forehand, I was just bombing that Explorer. I don't know what it was. It was just, we were jiving today, and I was throwing very far on my forehand, which is ironic because it didn't feel as good as the Glory on forehand, but I was throwing the Explorer better. So take that for what you will. What kind of grip do you use on forehand? Are you just like a typical like stacked grip when you throw forehand?
Yeah, just like a 2-finger stacked grip. Yeah.
Yeah. So I used to do this power grip, right? And then I've switched to 1 finger, which is kind of funny, but I feel like I get way better like stability on that. And like my fingers are just too fat. Like it's hard to stack any way I try, especially on a 7-speed. I'll jump up to a 9-speed before I start forehanding a disc. Mm-hmm. And I will say the Glory felt very comfortable on forehand. Maybe like a little bit more than the Explorer for whatever reason. But both of these discs were pretty okay to forehand. So I might try to start forehanding a little bit more on a lower speed disc. I don't know. I'm having a tough time recommending something because my heart says Explorer. That I feel like it just was way better. I feel it's going to give you a great experience. I know your arm speed's faster than mine. You throw quite a bit further than me, but I also like your comment on the heat. You are skilled enough to like slow down. You don't have to throw like max power to try to accomplish the things that you're trying to accomplish. Because I almost feel like, is the Glory going to be, it's really like, what do you feel like you're missing? Like, I know I don't typically ask this when I'm recommending something, but do you feel like you're missing like a slower like Vulture flight, or do you feel like you're missing like a slower Bobcat flight or a faster Bobcat flight?
More the second. So I definitely feel like I could use a faster Bobcat because there has definitely been holes, like maybe a 350-foot hole, where I really need just like that pushing right to left movement, and the Bobcat's just coming up short and hitting the left woods every time. You know what I mean? And so I've been looking for a disc like that. So in that way, I guess the Glory would sound better. But then also the Explorer sounds like I might have a little bit more control over it because it has. I'm not super familiar with the flight numbers on either of them. But
Glory is 7503. I believe Explorer is 7502.
Okay. Yeah.
So they're very similar. I will say this Opto Ice, I think the flight numbers are pretty accurate. I don't know, maybe give it 2.5. Like it was like a little, it had the stability there. This Glory, I will say, and I told Robbie this before we started, like the first run Glory that I have is probably more like close to this Explorer. This particular Glory definitely had like, I felt like had a tick more over stability for whatever reason.
Okay.
Whether it's the particular one I grabbed or whatever, but it did feel a little more overstable than I remember the Glory being.
Okay.
So I don't know, Robbie, help us here. We need like a third opinion. I'm not really sure which way to go.
I mean, I think it's a good choice either way. To me, I think I will always lean towards the more like, and you talked about wanting to make the disc do the work, but then we see that buzz on the backside where it's like there's just comfortability with it. To me, the beautiful part about the Explorer versus the Glory is that the Explorer comes in like a boatload of plastics because it's a stable mold that's been around a long time. So if you liked its flight and you wanted slight modification on that, very similar to the Vulture, there is variance there, whereas the Glory's newer and it only comes in the Grand that I'm aware of. Like if you don't like the Glory, you're stuck. Once again, kind of a deal. So personally, I think I would lean towards the Explorer just for that reason on the plastic variants and seeing that you're someone who likes the mold minimalized. But honestly, I'm also good. Like I would be completely fine if you are, Brad, if you just kind of make the call, Noah, of like which one sounds more appetizing to you, and we'll put it in the mail.
Let me say one point that just you kind of said, Robbie, that I think is very, very important. You can't make a Glory be an Explorer, but you can make an Explorer be a Glory with angle control.
I think that's a fantastic point, honestly. So, I mean, with the fact that the Explorer can come in multiple plastics, where I don't know, let's say, I want an Explorer that's going to fly more Passion-esque, you know what I mean? Then I can just get it in. I'm not even sure what plastic that would be, but some plastic. And, so like having that just availability to be able to, put 2 or 3 Explorers in the bag and just kind of use them in whatever way I need, that might be the better option.
Yeah.
The best thing that you can do putting Trilogy in the bag is go to search Trilogy Plastics, and it will pull up the list that shows the comparison, because Gold Line Plastic is their Fusion Plastic, which is their ESP, which is
right.
Gotcha.
But if you said Fusion Explorer, the Trilogy community would raise their pitchforks and stab you. So we would hate to see that. But dude, no, if you're down, we would love to send this Explorer in the mail for you and bring you on a future episode to see how it flies. Would you be down for that?
I'm so down for that.
I'm also going to send you one other thing. I pulled off my shelf here behind me that I just think you're going to love, and just sit on my shelf, and I can't stand just seeing it sit on my shelf anymore. But I'm going to send you this Vulture. Notice how old this Vulture is.
Yeah.
There's no flight numbers on this Vulture. So I'm going to send this to you as well. I think this is going to be like a flippy Vulture you're looking for. Take that trash Undertaker out and like put this in your bag. And I'm going to send that with you too.
All right. Thank you very much.
I love it.
problem.
Well, Noah, we appreciate you, man. We'll see you on a future episode.
All right. Sounds good.
Brad, we are coming through some fire interaction. Once we cleared 100, I feel like we've gotten so comfortable. Guests are comfortable with us. I mean, you had Travis with I can't even remember what take it was, but I think he said something about Bergs.
He did.
And it was like, I can't believe anyone would ever bag this disc or something. Like, I mean, just savagery out here. Nailed some folks. And then now we're attacking the guests for discs they have in their bag. Guys, you never know what's going to happen on in the bag.
Hey, well, I mean, if it's good, keep in the bag. If it's trash, recycle it or something, man, because you got to get it out. Hey, open invitation, Undertaker throwers. If you are in the comments, roast me, please.
Send it. Yeah. The Undertaker that I go back and forth on the Undertaker because I throw my tech disc all the time. So I'm so used to that Undertaker feel in my hand.
Right. Yeah.
But I feel you, Brad, because I get out to the field and I'm like, this is it. This is where I put the Undertaker in my bag. And then I'm like, it's okay. Like,
yeah, it's fine. Like I think if you're experienced, it's fine. But I don't, a lot of people will be like, oh, you're newer to distance drivers, control drivers. Here's an Undertaker. And I'm always like, no, don't do that to them. You're going to scar them for life.
I now that I have Eagles back in the bag, it's really hard for me to think about like, let's do the Undertaker. But there are other amazing discs out there that people want to try, that people can look at, and they can find them at foundationdisc.com. Brad, what's new in the warehouse, sir?
All right, so we're going through. There's just discs everywhere in here. Couple notable things we're talking about Venoms. We got Glow Venoms hitting the site. That are AB. We also have AB full foil zones. Isaac, can you hand me one of those real quick? For our watchers, I want to show people because these are wild. Like, check this thing out.
Whoa.
It's all black. This like foil holographic. It's crazy. It's like their super color, but like foil.
Yeah.
So
ESP?
Yeah. Yes. So it's a wild disc. Those are going to be available. Let's see. We've got a bunch of like Z Light stuff going up, like Z Light Passions. We have Fly Dye Passions. We have Cicadas, Fly Dye Cicadas, X Cicadas, which are very interesting. We have a juniors tournament this weekend, and I'm taking a bunch of those out for the kiddos to like look through because I think it's going to be a great disc for some of those kids to throw.
Yeah.
So we have some of that going up. We're going to have some like P3X is going up. We're going to have some other Trilogy. We got P2s back in stock finally. We have MX2s from Prodigy. I mean, there's a lot of like stock things going up that we're finally getting back into rotation. All the drive, like Z drives are out now. So those are going to be on, which are going to be great. And we got some MJ Z Flex Jawbreaker Comets, which I think is hilarious, but
let's go.
Also awesome. And hey, friend of the podcast, Dylan Cease, we have some fundraising buzzes that are going to be going up as well.
Come
on. For Cactus Rock or Olympus, one of the two. Can't remember which one.
Cactus Rock?
Yeah. So those are going to be going up if you're a fan of Dylan and want to support that. happy to support that through here as well. Also want to give a shout out to a couple other things. We still have If It's Good pigs and zones left, so make sure you're picking up those. Those are going to disappear very soon for another project. So if you want to pick those up, make sure you pick them up now. Also, our subscription box this month is going to be electric, and our one in October is going to be electric. So now is the time to pick those up. Let's see. How do I tease this month's box? There's going to be both a custom stamp and a custom overstamp in this month box. And the custom stamp is a special run that was done for us that people have been begging for like 6 months for us to do.
Okay.
And we even mentioned a clue in this episode. So, hey, if you want to dig in there and just figure out what the box is, great. Teasers will come out, but now's a good time to jump on. I know it's holiday season, but I always feel like these last like 4 months of the year are just like fire for our box because we just get a lot of momentum because we've got September's box, which is crazy. October's box is going to be out of this world. That's a clue. And then November is always our mystery. We've got a big plan for that one this year. And then December is our Christmas box, which is always a good time. So great time to check that out. Also, I'm going to shout you out, Robbie. Robbie's doing virtual lessons. Make sure you check those out. They're going very well, I hear, Robbie. So yeah. I'm excited. How's things on your front and your students' front?
Yeah, it's fun. I've done, I think, 3 backhand lessons, a forehand lesson, and a putting lesson. Mm-hmm. And every single one of them, like, there's been a moment in every lesson where it's been like, wow, like this is crazy. And it's one thing, I always tell people this, it's one thing to watch a video on the internet of like, I could send Brad a video that's like, hey, watch so-and-so and they're teaching this mechanic or they're doing this. It's another thing entirely for me to be like, all right, Brad, you think you're getting into this position that you saw in the video, but it's not working. And you're like, I don't know, I guess the video doesn't work. But it's another thing entirely for me to be like, all right, that right foot, I want you to move your right foot, move those toes back like 5 degrees. And when you do that and then you throw and I'm sitting there watching you throw, it just unlocks so much that personalizes it to you. And they're 30-minute lessons, so it's not a huge time commitment.
Yeah.
And they're $40, so it's more than a disc for sure. But the biggest sell to me is the opportunity to, you have this, you have an undertaker that doesn't fly like Brad wants it to fly. And then suddenly you have Noah who's like, I learned how to throw a little farther. And suddenly this disc unlocked for me. So instead of spending $40 on 2 discs that you hope might work, you spend $40 to unlock being able to throw more discs in general. Yeah. And so it's an investment in your game, but it's been a blast. So really, really enjoying it. There are a ton of slots open and available. So hopefully you can find a time that works for you.
Yeah. All right. And, we appreciate you all. And as always, if it's good,
keep it in the bag. We'll see you next week.